I don't have time. I am busy. I am tired. I am in the middle of something. Got a lot on my plate right now. These are some of the replies that I get when I ask someone to start working on a side hustle or a hobby. And I get it. Everyone is busy. I started my YouTube channel while working a 9 to 5 job. And if you have seen my YouTube video about how I make YouTube videos, you will probably know how much effort goes into this. And the only reason I could publish 100 videos in 2 years was because I learned to effectively manage my time. So in this video, I will show you the tools I use and the systems I built that helped me to do more in less time. But before we go there, why should we even be productive? What's the whole point of doing many things in a shorter time? For me, productivity is not just about doing more. It's about minimizing the time spent doing a task while maximizing the value I generate from it. And I try not to be productive just for the sake of being productive. For example, there are certain creative tasks where I take my time. No shortcuts there. But then there are certain tasks that are demanding for the brain but can be efficiently outsourced to other tools. And nothing is more important than having an efficient task management system. There is always something to do, right? I was the kind of person who used to work with mental task lists. We all know how well that ends. Now, whenever a task pops into my mind, I know this is not going to happen until I write it down. And the easiest way to do that is to use a pen and paper. If it works for you, by all means. But for me, a pen and paper system always has its limitations. There are a lot of digital task planners available that finding the best to-do app was once on my to-do list. Now, I use a combination of Apple Notes and Notion to track my tasks. And for those who are not familiar with Notion, it is a note-taking app that provides several tools to plan and manage our work and life. I do everything in Notion, from content management to writing food recipes. My life literally runs on Notion. And the heart of Notion is its databases. They are like Excel sheet but on steroids. Here is my task database in Notion, and every new task gets an entry in the database. Now each task has some properties such as current status, priority, due date, etc. Each task could also be linked to elements in other databases such as a video in my content management system. I also have a someday list for tasks with no particular due date. This is again a tip from the productivity guru David Allen. If I get a recommendation to read a particular book or visit a particular place, I will add it to my someday list. And when it finally comes to buying the book or planning the holiday, I just have a look at this list. Also, when I open my Notion homepage, I can see the tasks that I have planned for that day, including the someday list. I always make sure not to plan too many tasks in a single day. There is also a week view and a month view, but I just use them to get an overview. And if I can't finish something by the end of the day, I just move it to the next. But then there is one problem with Notion. It's not that mobile friendly. So when something new comes up, there is always a friction with opening up Notion and filling those property fields. So that's where my quick capture system with Apple Notes come into picture. Every new task goes into the Apple Notes first and then later gets moved to the task database in Notion at the end of the day. Another tip I got from David Allen is the importance of wording the task properly. So every task should start with an action verb. For example, make payment for the car insurance. And here I try to frame it as specifically as possible. So instead of just writing, create content for my next YouTube video, I have a task that says write script for the YouTube video about my productivity system. But for the tiny to-do list items, such as sending a birthday card or picking something up from the supermarket on the way home, those items do not go into the Apple Notes or the Notion database. I add it to the reminder app on my phone, and the second those are done, I check them off and allow my brain to forget all about them. But the rest everything first go into my Apple Notes. And that brings us to my quick capture system. Again, David Allen is back with more wisdom. Your brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. So I developed a capture and store system to free up some brain space. I did this earlier with a paid app called Drafts, but recently I moved to Apple Notes. I want to keep my productivity system as simple as possible with the apps that are already available on my devices. If I am reading a blog or listening to an audiobook and want to take notes on something, I will just open Apple Notes and write it down. I simply click the plus icon on my home screen and I can input the idea or task in less than 10 seconds. And that's all. Or if I am in a situation where I can't use my hands, like when driving or working out, I just dictate it to Siri and ask it to add it to Apple Notes. And then at the end of each day, when I sit in front of my laptop, I organize all those ideas and tasks into the corresponding locations such as calendar, Notion, etc. And then I delete them from Apple Notes. I like to do this step on a laptop rather than my phone because I type so much faster on a keyboard and navigation on the desktop app is usually much easier. So I know that if something remains in Apple Notes, it's something that I haven't processed yet. And again, the key is to make this capture system as easy as possible, because whether you are a content creator or a business owner, ideas often drive our progress. So we need to capture those ideas then and there when they pop up before we can bring them to life. And having a system to note them down at any time means you will never forget that next $1 million idea. I am very bad at remembering important events, be it anniversaries, birthdays, or anything of that sort. So I wish I had someone who can remind me of such dates. And that role is handled by my Apple Calendar. It's the default calendar app on Apple devices. Nothing fancy, just a simple app that does its job well. My calendar basically tells me when and where to be. For example, if I make an appointment with my car service center, I ask Siri to create an event in my calendar app, or just open it directly and add it myself. So if something else comes up on the same day, I can just look at my calendar and know I am occupied for this time. Everything goes into the calendar and this takes an enormous amount of strain off my brain. I also use it as a day planner to intentionally block out time for the things that I want to do. Every night before going to bed, I plan my next day on my calendar so that every slot is filled. See, for example, I have blocked 2 hours tomorrow to fill in my B-rolls. But here, I don't go into minute detail on what I will do. I just reserve 2 hours for content creation and that's it. And my note-taking tool Notion is where I will then break that down into smaller, more manageable pieces. Even if I cannot stick to the plan always, reserving such blocks in a day helps me to be more intentional about spending my time. If you want to save time in your life, then you definitely need to have an email management system, because 90% of the emails that end up in our inboxes are just plain distractions and don't bring any value. I have multiple accounts for personal and business purposes, but then everything is managed through a single mail app, the Apple Mail. And as you can see, I have no unread emails. I work with a zero inbox policy, something I learned from Thiago Forte, the founder of the Second Brain. Idea is that when the email touches our inbox, it need to go to one of the 3 systems. If the email concerns a future task, it ends up in my task manager. If I need to make notes from it, then it goes to the note-taking app. If there is no value in the email, I delete it now and then. But then this is easier said than done. What if I get 100 emails in a day? The simple answer is I don't. Most emails that clutter our inboxes are promotional emails or newsletters. So the moment I get such an email, I scroll down and click on the unsubscribe button at the end. This was a game-changing step for me in terms of my email management. Another thing that you can do in Gmail is to set an automation rule to search for the word unsubscribe in the incoming email and move it from inbox to another folder. Also, when I register for a new service or sign up on a website, I use the hide my email feature from Apple so that my personal email doesn't end up with spammers. My inbox is my private space and I intend to keep it that way. I do consider myself a very organized person. I believe that there is a place for everything. Both my working desk and the laptop desk are always free of clutter. So an essential part of my productivity workflow is having a proper file management system. The folders on my Mac are organized into business and personal categories and then further divided into different subfolders. For example, if I get a prescription from the doctor, it goes into the medical folder in the personal space. Travel documents go into the travel folder, and everything related to my YouTube channel is in one place. I've defined folder structures and I've created individual folders for each video on the channel so that it's easy for me to find a file or a folder that I need later. I also back up everything on the Apple Cloud just in case. I also have developed other productive systems to efficiently consume and create content, but those are a bit more complex. So if you are interested, you can check these videos. There are a lot of people that swear by specific tools and apps, but I don't think that really matters. Start small, keep it simple, and then expand based on your use cases and needs. And if you are interested in my Notion task management system, I will leave a link in the description below. And I would be grateful if you can support me and my channel by clicking on the like button and subscribing to the channel. Until I see you with another video, have a wonderful rest of the day and adios.